So this is the DJI Osmo 360, which is DJI's first 360-degree action camera. It features a 1-inch sensor that can shoot up to 8K 50 FPS, and it can create cool shots like this. So in this video today, instead of going through all the specs of this camera, I thought I'd actually compare it to the DJI Osmo Action 4. Now I know these cameras might seem quite different at first, with one being your traditional action camera and then the Osmo 360 being a 360 camera. But the Osmo 360 allows you to shoot with one of the single lenses either side of the camera, and this makes it act like a more traditional action camera, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. So yeah, we'll compare these two cameras today. We'll see what the single lens mode's like on the Osmo 360, and then I'll get into what it's like to use a 360 camera and what scenarios the best suited them. Now if we first look at the design of these two cameras, you'll notice that they're very different. The Action 4 is your traditional looking action camera with a removable lens cover to protect your lens from damage, and two screens for easy viewing when filming. The Osmo 360 on the other hand has two lenses that protrude quite far out of the body, and these do not have removable lens covers, so these are not protected from the elements when you're out filming. This just means you need to be more cautious when you're out filming, and also when you're either storing it in your bag or placing it down on a surface. Just make sure that there's nothing there to damage those lenses. If you do damage the lenses, you can send it off to DJI for repair, but it takes around 90 days from what I've seen online, so you would be without your camera for a little while. You can get some plastic lens guards to protect the lenses, but I've not had any experience with these, so I can't comment on their usefulness or whether they affect the image quality at all. The rest of the Osmo 360 is typical DJI, with great build quality, the buttons feel really nice, and the screen is nice and easily viewable outdoors. Now if we take a look at these cameras side by side, you'll notice that there's not a huge difference in the size. So the Osmo 360 takes up a similar amount of space in your bag as an Action 4. But one thing to note if you are filming a lot of 360-degree footage is you tend to need a selfie stick to get the best sort of results. So just factor that in if you're taking this camera with you. Now one slightly annoying thing with this camera is these door latches. When I first opened this camera I couldn't really figure out how to open these. So there's a small springed latch on the side here, and you just push that to the side and then you pull the door down. Now originally when I unboxed this I was pulling the latch and I expected the door to spring open, because that's usually what this mechanism kind of does when I've used it in the past. But no, you just push it to one side and you pull it down and then it's open and it's free then. It's just a bit of a weird design, and I have seen that it's caught a few people off guard online, so yeah, just a bit of a weird one there. Now as I mentioned earlier on, I do want to kind of ignore the specs and all the resolutions and all that type of stuff that you can do on these cameras, and I just want to focus in on the single lens shooting modes and what the quality is like there, and what added benefits you get with shooting 360-degree footage as well as single lens footage, and just to see really whether the Osmo 360 can replace a traditional action camera for your single lens stuff, but then you also have that added benefit then that it can shoot 360 footage when you need it. Okay, so I've got both cameras set up now. We've got the Osmo Action 4 on the left here, and this is shooting in 4K 25 FPS. And then the Osmo 360 is shooting in 5K 25 FPS. They're both set to the same white balance, and they're both locked to the same ISO settings, and they're both on auto exposure set to 0. Now one weird thing with the Osmo 360 is in single lens mode it only goes down to 25p, so this means you can't shoot any lower than 25 FPS, which is weird because in all the other modes you do get 24 FPS. So I don't know if this is just a software issue and we're going to get 24 FPS in the future. I'm not really sure why we've got that limitation on this camera really. But yeah, let me know what you think about the footage on both of these cameras in the comments below. So I thought I'd just quickly go over what I actually use my action cameras for. They're mainly just for static shots of landscapes and cityscapes. And I just use them for that instance because they're easy to travel with, so if I'm traveling light one day, they're just easy to shove in a bag and they're easy to pull out and just get quick shots and then put it away in your pocket or your bag or whatever. So I'm not really doing much intense filming with these, so as long as the Osmo 360 can kind of like be quite similar to the Action 4, I could easily replace that, and then I get the added benefit of it being a dual purpose camera where I can do shots like this, but then I can go and do some creative shots with the 360 mode as well. So yeah, it'll just be quite interesting to see how these two compare. Oh, I do just want to mention as well that I'm currently filming both of these in the normal color profile, and that's just so I don't have to grade both footage from both cameras. But both cameras do shoot in D-Log-M, so if you do want to shoot in a flatter profile and then grade later, you can do. And most of the footage that I've been doing on the Osmo 360, like the 360 footage, that's been shot in D-Log-M. I will put a little banner on the screen just in the bottom right corner or bottom left corner, just to let you know which one's been shot in normal color profile and which one's been shot in log. But yeah, I just thought I'd quickly mention that just so you know, like the colors coming out of these two cameras when I'm comparing them are just the normal color profile, what DJI thinks is best, so yeah. Okay, I just wanted to jump in here real quick and just talk about the footage that we've got side by side here, because I'm quite shocked at how bad the Osmo 360 footage looks in comparison to the Action 4. So if we just look at this shot in particular here, you can see that we've lost a lot of detail in the clouds. My skin looks like it's got some sort of smoothing filter on it. And then even the texture in the grass and the road has been kind of like flattened out. Now it looks like we've got some sort of HDR implementation on the Osmo 360 that's making everything look a little bit more flatter, and it's got less contrast in the footage. But both of these are locked to the same settings, so we've got -2 noise reduction and -2 sharpness on both cameras here. And the white balance was set at 5100 Kelvin too, but you will notice on the Osmo 360 that the white balance has gone more towards the magenta side. So it's made my skin tone look a lot more red than it actually was. And even the black in my t-shirt just looks less black than it does on the Action 4. The Action 4's footage there looks a lot more true to life, so I'm not sure what is going on with the Osmo 360's footage there. And the footage looks so different that I thought I'd got my settings wrong on the Osmo 360. But after checking everything over, I couldn't find anything that would smooth out the footage like it has done. So I then went and tested a few more things just to see if I could replicate this or whether it was something I'd done wrong on the day. So the first shot here is how I shot it on the day. So it's 4K 25 on the Osmo Action 4 and it's 5K 25 on the Osmo 360. And again here you can see that the image is a lot more flat on the Osmo 360. And it kind of seems like maybe there's some sort of like noise reduction there. Then I thought I would try out the 4K 25 on the Osmo 360 just in case there was something going on with the 5K mode. Maybe it was like upscaling from 4K or something like that. But again, you can see that the footage has been smoothed out. It doesn't look quite as smooth on my skin in this shot, but if you look at the background, there's a lot more noise on the Action 4. Whereas it looks like it's been smoothed out on the Osmo 360. Then I decided to look at what it would be like if we shot in D-Log on both cameras. And then here, it does seem like the D-Log kind of works slightly better on the Osmo 360. I've had to bump up the exposure on the Osmo Action 4. But again, you can see in the background that the noise has been smoothed off. So I do feel like we've potentially got some sort of noise reduction going on here, even though I've put the noise reduction down to -2. And then I thought I would see what the 360 footage would look like cropped into the single lens kind of frame. And again, you can see that it's still got that flatter look and it seems like over processed even though I've turned off all of the processing. So yeah, I don't know what's going on with the footage from the Osmo 360, but it does seem like it's got some sort of processing going on in the background even though I've supposedly turned those off. And even in the D-Log-M, it's still there. So yeah, it's making me question whether I'd want to keep this camera, to be honest. I did also notice that the Osmo 360 footage has this micro-jittering, whereas the Action 4 looks nice and smooth. Both of these were shot handheld with the exact same exposure settings as I mentioned, same ISO range, and they've both got the same rock-steady stabilization with the standard D-Warp field of view. So I'm not really sure what's causing this. So after I noticed this issue, I just thought I would go into my garden and I would set up a few shots just to see if I can make this happen again. So this first shot here is the same as the previous ones you've just seen. So this is auto exposure locked at 0. It's got the same ISO range and it's got the same stabilization settings. Then this next shot is manual exposure locked at 1/500, which was +1 on the exposure value. And I just did this to see whether there was any issues with shutter speed and the stabilization, because I have heard in the past that if you go under, I think it's 1/100, there's a bit of issue with the stabilization. So I just went up to quite a fast shutter speed just to see if I could maybe get rid of the micro jitters in that way. And then this final shot is with both cameras resting on a flat surface, just to eliminate any hand movement that may be causing issues with stabilization. So in this footage, I did notice there's a slight bit of movement in the corners of the Action 4 as well, but nothing as serious as the Osmo 360. And the Osmo 360 seems to have it all over the footage and not just in the corners. Now obviously I understand there is going to be a bit of micro jitter here and there because of the stabilization trying to counteract your handshake, but it just seems more noticeable on the Osmo 360. Now I did add some stabilization in DaVinci Resolve, and this got rid of the micro jitter like straight away. But it's not really something that you should have to do. Now I will admit, I'm not a super technical person. I don't do a lot of like video testing, and I'm not 100% sure whether I've like set this up right, but I've set the Osmo 360 up just how I set up all of my other cameras and all my other action cameras that I've had in the past, and I've never had this issue before. So it does seem like it's more of an issue with the camera in single lens mode rather than it being something that I've done on my end. If you do have an Osmo 360 and you have noticed some of this micro jittering in the single lens mode, do let me know in the comments below, because it would be good to bring this to DJI's attention, and hopefully it's something that can be fixed in a firmware update. Now when it comes to shooting 360 footage, the main thing you've got to keep an eye on here is the stitch line. So because this camera has two lenses on either side, and it uses both pieces of footage and stitches them together into one big piece of 360-degree footage, down this center line here is where you will get the stitch line. So ideally what you want to do is, if you're filming for this camera for instance, you want one of the lenses to be facing your subject, because if you have the camera facing this way, you're more likely to get a stitch line in the center of your footage. So just keep in mind that the best way to shoot with this camera is to keep one of the lenses pointed towards your main subject, and then hopefully you won't really see any stitch lines. And another thing to keep in mind is the closer you get to a subject, so I don't know the exact distance, but the closer you keep getting to a subject, the more that the stitch line can be pronounced, especially if you go for those wider shots. So just be cautious of that if you're out filming and you're trying to shoot something that's more of a closer subject. Now when it comes to the editing side of things, this is where 360-degree footage can be quite tricky. So if you go out shooting in the single lens mode that we were mentioning earlier, that's just regular footage. It'll come out in a flat file, it can go straight on your timeline, there's nothing you need to change there. But when it comes to the 360-degree footage, this is very different because you're capturing the whole scene in one big 360-degree sphere. And then what you need to do then is reframe your shots in post. This can sometimes mean that getting the shot that you want can be quite difficult, especially if you're going for something that's a little bit more complex. So the way that you go about reframing the footage is you have to put it into an app that's dedicated for 360 footage. And DJI has two options at the moment. There's the DJI Mimo app, which is for your phones, and then they've got the DJI Studio app for desktop. Now because DJI is new to the 360-degree camera space, their footage is quite bare bones at the moment. It's not got many features in there, and sometimes it can be quite frustrating trying to edit. So the way that I've been doing it is I'll put it into either one of these apps and I will do all of my reframing first, and then once I've done that I will export the file into a flat file, and then I can put it into my editing software, which is DaVinci Resolve, and in there I can do all of my cutting, speed ramping, anything like that, just because if you try and do that in the DJI apps, you're going to become quite frustrated just because it's so limited at the moment. Now I want to touch on DJI's ecosystem and what I think is the main selling point for this camera. So if you already have an Action 4 like I do, or the Action 5, this Osmo 360 uses the same mounting point on the bottom as those cameras. So if you've got any accessories, they just clip on like they do on your other action cameras. And the camera can also automatically connect to the DJI mics. So the DJI Mic 2 and the DJI Mic Mini are both supported on this camera. And I think this is a huge win because in the past, it's been quite hard to get good audio on 360-degree cameras. And especially if you've had to have a transmitter and you've tried to try and hide it in the stitch line, this just avoids all of that, and you can easily set up great audio just within a few seconds. And as I just mentioned, if you've already got an Action 4, an Action 5, an Osmo Pocket 3, you're more than likely going to have these mics already. So you've already got a really good audio setup with this camera without spending any extra money. And then if you do have the mounting accessories for the Action 4 or the Action 5, you've already got like loads of mounting accessories and tripods and things like that. So you don't have to spend any extra money to get accessories if you're already in the DJI ecosystem. Another huge win is it uses the same batteries as the Action 5, and they're the same batteries as the Action 4, but you have to keep in mind that the Action 4's batteries have a slightly lower capacity, so your runtime wouldn't be quite as long there. But the Action 4 can take the newer, bigger batteries, so if you do get some more batteries for the Osmo 360 and you keep your Action 4, you'll then have more batteries for your Action 4 as well. So yeah, just the DJI ecosystem is just such a good draw to their cameras at the moment, and I think they're killing it with the ecosystem right now. So to round this video off, I'll just mention a few other things that I've noticed about this camera while I've been using it over the past couple of weeks. So the battery life has been okay. It does say online that you'll get 100 minutes runtime when shooting 8K. I'm not sure whether you'd actually hit that. They must be testing that in like certain situations and stuff, because I do notice that if you're filming or you're transferring files, or even if it's just sat there with the screen on and you're just waiting in between shoots, the battery does drain quite quickly. It's not really been much of an issue for me. I'm not shooting loads of long form content on the camera, but it's just something to keep in mind. But it does support quick charging, so it does charge quite quickly if you do need to give it a top up, so it's not too bad. And like I mentioned earlier, if you've already got some DJI batteries lying around, you can just swap and yeah, you're good to go. One other thing I didn't mention in the ecosystem chat, I just ended up going for the standard bundle. I didn't get the creator bundle, I think it's called, where you get like the selfie stick and the extra batteries and things. And that's just, again, because I've already got accessories already. I just didn't see the point in me spending the extra £100 to get all of those things. So again, I think if you're already in the DJI ecosystem, I would save the money and just go for the standard bundle. But if this is your first DJI camera, I can see why the creator bundle is quite enticing. And then I have noticed that the camera can get pretty warm quite quickly, especially when you're shooting the 8K 50 FPS. And then as well, if you're transferring quite a lot of files over to your phone, again, it can get quite hot. Now, I've not had any overheating issues just yet, and I have been filming in weather that's around 27 degrees, so it's not been too bad. And when I was out filming that day, I didn't get any overheating issues, like I say, but if you're in like warmer climates and more humid climates, I would just maybe keep in mind that it can get hot quite quickly. But I suppose with a 360 camera, you're not really gonna be filming like really long pieces to camera. They're usually quite short bursts, so you should be all right. But yeah, just keep in mind that it can get hot quite quickly. So will the Osmo 360 be replacing my Action 4? And the simple answer to that is no. I can't trust the single lens mode just at the moment, just because of the jittering and then the quality not being quite up to par compared to the Action 4. I'd rather keep that Action 4 around just for certain scenarios. And if I'm putting my camera in harm's way, I'd rather have that camera be there just because it's more durable rather than the 360 camera. But the Osmo 360 is going to stay in my bag. I do really like shooting with it, and the full 360 footage in the 8K mode is really nice. It's a lot better than older Action cameras, so it's a lot more usable now. So yeah, I do recommend this camera if you're looking for something that's easy to shoot with. Like if you're going on a hike, you can just stick it in your bag and like, you know, like in your pocket on a pole, and it's like you've got a personal drone following you around. Or if you're just trying to like show the landscape and you're just panning around and trying to show your audience where you are. It's really good for things like that. And it is really good if you get one of the extended selfie sticks to kind of replace a drone sometimes, because drones are getting a little bit harder to fly these days. If you have the extended selfie stick, it's almost like you've got a drone following you around, like I say. So yeah, it's really good for shots like that. Just do bear in mind that it is a little bit more tricky when it comes to the editing. Just having to do all your reframing afterwards is a little bit tricky, but once you get your head around it, it's not too bad, and you can get quite fast at doing your keyframes. I do think as well DJI will continue to improve their apps. The apps and the camera have already had quite a few updates since release, and they're always adding like new features and refining things. So I'm sure like in a few months' time, this camera will have a lot more features and it'll be a lot more easier to edit with. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope if you are looking at this camera, it's helped you decide whether you want one or not. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.